This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is very different to the weekday show. It is about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week. We also then each put forward the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, which is one that's not getting the attention that I suppose we feel that it deserves, and then our favourite story, which is highly subjective. In fact, the whole thing is very subjective, which is why we need an adjudicator, our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang, to decide on a winner. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. I like the fact that Adam said everything's subjective, therefore we need Adam Lang, which just suggests that you're not objective.
It's probably accurate.
Oh, probably. Well, let's see how objective you are with the first category being the biggest story.
Why don't you go first on this one, Michael?
Oh, you reckon?
I tried this a couple of weeks ago and you turned me down and said, no. Why don't you go first on this one?
All right, I will. Because for me, the big story this week came from federal politics, and it actually came in kind of two parts.
Multiple stories. Go on.
No, it's not two stories. It is two parts of the one story. They are so firmly linked, and you will see why. Because the first was the by-election loss last weekend for the Liberal Party in the Melbourne seat of Aston. That is very significant because it's the first time in like a century that the government has won a seat from the opposition at a by-election. So it was already history-making, but it prompted then a whole lot of soul-searching from the coalition over what they stand for in terms of kind of key issues, very key issues like climate change and the voice referendum. And they called a party room meeting, and that's where the second part of the story is. And the really kind of big news here is that the Liberal Party voted to formally oppose the government's model for the referendum later this year over an Indigenous voice to Parliament. They want a legislated voice rather than a change to the Constitution, blaming a lack of detail from the Prime Minister. It is a huge move from the Liberals. It is a controversial move, one that goes against kind of news poll figures through the week that suggested that the referendum would pass based on the information that was available to date in both the number of states required and also the number of actual votes. But it's triggered, as you can imagine, a huge backlash from Indigenous community leaders as well, like Noel Pearson, who described opposition leader Peter Dutton as an undertaker preparing the grave to bury Uluru, referring to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said it was clear that it's an interesting point that the opposition hasn't listened to the messages from the Aston by-election and from the federal election last year. He's still optimistic that the referendum could succeed potentially, but he says that he is relying on the goodwill of coalition voters, and certainly some coalition MPs may not actually toe the party line on this one. What it does mean, though, is that we are in for a very political, potentially very ugly 6 months. It is a huge story because this week we may have just seen the referendum fail before it could even get off the ground. So a big story, very serious one for me today, Sean.
Now that is it's a massive story. It's certainly for mine, definitely the second biggest story of the week, without a doubt. The biggest, of course, being interest rates and Philip Lowe. There is a light at the end of the interest rate tunnel. This week, the Reserve Bank Board kept rates on hold. That's the first time in 11 meetings that the board hasn't lifted the cash rate. Now, for some people out there, Michael, who probably don't understand exactly why we care so much about this thing called the cash rate, I'm going to explain that. It's actually the benchmark rate. It's what lenders like the banks use to set mortgage rates and credit card rates and deposit rates and all sorts of things. The official cash rate has gone up 3.5 percentage points in a year. That's the fastest rate rising cycle in modern times. And now it looks like it's coming to an end. Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe said inflation data at the end of this month is all important as to whether rates rise again. There is definitely a bias towards lifting rates one more time, but who knows? Lowe this week also spoke at the National Press Club in Canberra. He called on the government to get the budget back into balance in the medium term. He said boosting productivity is very important to the economy. He raised concerns about the lack of housing stock and the fact that as a society, Australia pushes up land and house prices. He also pondered what's happened to all the $100 notes? He said there are 18 $100 notes per person. He hasn't got his 18. I haven't got my 18. I bet Adam hasn't. Michael might. And he wants to know where they've all gone. Big story. Interest rates in Philip Lowe. Beat that.
I did. Go on. Sorry. I'm making assumptions here, Adam.
Self-declared. So, Michael, I've been really looking forward to this weekend edition in particular because now you, as man of the people, have claimed a new level. Yes, this is Michael Thompson from A Current Affair speaking loudly now. But unfortunately, Michael, I can't give you the win. I don't think you've been the man of the people on this one.
Oh,
really?
Yes.
Adam, I think before we go further, you better just explain why you're calling Michael Thompson the Current Affair man.
Well, fair enough, Sean. It was Tuesday night's edition, obviously airing nationally, that is metropolitan and regional across the country from 7 p.m. Our own Michael Thompson was on television. And that's live and on demand. And of course, what he was promoting was not just Fear and Greed, which he managed to squeeze in a brilliant mention.
Sort of. Right at the end. Yeah,
I think he did very well. But more so, his book. And there he was on his front yard, in his backyard, with his family, being the man of the people on A Current Affair, promoting how to be remembered. It was wonderful.
It was wonderful. Did you notice, though, how tawdry the lawn looked?
Might have to watch it again.
Well, to be fair, I didn't have time to prepare the lawn because it was all done very, very quickly, as often happens when you're dealing with a major news story like the launch of How to Be Remembered. But no, it was good fun, and it is a fantastic kind of bit of a plug for the book, and yeah, it's just nice that A Current Affair wanted to showcase a true man of the people.
Michael, it is brilliant. They did showcase a true man of the people. But back to the stories. I'm sorry, I can't give you this one. As Sean reported on the Reserve Bank announcement of interest rates on hold, that's 3.2 million mortgage holders who breathed a sigh of relief. And that scale of economic impact is enormous. Now, federal politics, the profound message for the Liberal Party, or two profound messages, really, from the Aston by-election and their response to The Voice, I think is a massive story, but in a particularly narrower focus. So Sean wins this one.
Excellent decision.
All right, there we go. It is 1-0, and I accept your decision graciously, Adam, because I appreciate, again, the giant plug that you gave for me and my story on A Current Affair, which can be found on the A Current Affair website and also on my social media. Head to Michael Thompson Author on Instagram.
Enough.
Never. It is never enough. I figured if I didn't win that story, I was just going to squeeze in another plug. I'm going to wring the value out of this one here. Now, shall we move on to most remarkable?
Yes. How about I go first on this one?
Yes, please do.
Most remarkable for me, the resilience of the Australian housing market. Consensus has been that house prices will fall this cycle by at least 10%. Everyone sort of agrees on that. Many economists think it's more likely to be between 15 and 20%. So far across capital cities, house prices are down, peak to trough, about 9%, i.e. we're still heading lower, according to all the experts. In some cities, notably Sydney, it has been more. Well, this week we found out that house prices across the country, on average, rose last month for the first time since April last year. It looks like pressures, other than interest rates, are starting to play out in the market. Lower stock levels, tight rental conditions, overseas immigration. There are hundreds of thousands of people coming to live in Australia at the moment. Sydney house prices rose 1.4% last month. That's the second positive month in a row, though prices are still down 12% on a year earlier. That's according to CoreLogic. Melbourne prices were up 0.6%. That's the first increase since early last year. For Melbourne, though prices are off 9%, Perth and Brisbane prices were higher. Mind you, they did fall in Hobart, Canberra, Darwin and Adelaide. This isn't supposed to be happening. The impact of 10 rate rises and people coming off low fixed rate loans is supposed to be pushing prices down, but they're not. Now that is remarkable. Michael.
That is remarkable. That is a really good story. It sounds like you just, I can hear you breathing kind of as though you're just expecting me to say something that's kind of bad sportish. And
Absolutely.
I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry to disappoint, Sean, because
You must have a really remarkable story then. You must have great confidence in yours.
What stopped you this time, Michael?
oh, please, Adam. Look, I always have confidence in my story. The thing I don't have confidence in is the judging.
Way to butter me up.
Well, and there's actually probably a certain amount of irony in me attacking the judge before my most remarkable story, because my story is about Donald Trump.
Oh.
And this week, he became the first US president ever to face criminal charges. And what a spectacle it was. It truly was. A spectacle is the only term that you can use to describe it, because he had the Trump 757 flying from Florida to New York, the huge security operation to try and kind of keep the protests and unrest to a minimum. And then the almighty spray, the spray that Trump unleashed the moment he got home to Mar-a-Lago, just because you could tell he just could not keep it in any longer.
Of course, Michael, this was after the judge had said, please, calm the rhetoric. Don't do too much on social media.
That's right. And he just could not keep it down any longer. Because we've been through the allegations. The story's been everywhere this week because it is just so remarkable. Quite simply, it is that Trump's company and his personal lawyer allegedly made a series of hush money payments to various people, including the porn star Stormy Daniels, to prevent claims that Trump feared would be harmful to his presidential campaign. The former president obviously declared it a witch hunt using Truth Social, his social media network. He was, as you say, Sean, warned not to say anything by the judge. Clearly that jurisdiction ended at the New York state line, so he just waited until he got back to Florida and then gave it to everyone, from Hillary Clinton to the judge's family, as you do. I would never attack your family, Adam, just to be clear that there are standards here. The next court date isn't until December 4 this year, so you can imagine just how much this is going to be picked over and discussed in the next 8 months. But probably the most extraordinary, the most remarkable part of this is just how it may end up feeding just perfectly into Trump's narrative of being a victim of a stacked system, and could actually boost his chances of being the Republican candidate to take on Joe Biden next year. I just love the theater of it all, the true spectacle. And I know, Adam, that despite my earlier criticism of you, that you're with me on this.
Right. So, Michael, you and Donald Trump have finally displayed something in common. You both like attacking judges.
I don't know. I really don't like the way I set myself up for that.
No. Poor, very poor.
I just wouldn't have picked you, and Donald had so much common ground. Anywho, it is a spectacle. It is probably not remarkable given Donald Trump's form over many, many years. So I think it's a great story and amusing, but Sean has to win this one for the most remarkable story of the week. We have endemic supply issues in the Australian property market. There is not enough. We are bringing immigration back. We, of course, then have a supply constraint, and that is affecting property. And so amazing, really, or the remarkable part is that the decline in house prices was so muted. I think Stephen Koukoulas picked it as down 10%. This is almost a year ago. And he's about right so far. It hasn't fallen more than that, and now prices have started to rise, and I think that has greater economic impact, and that is therefore my choice as remarkable story of the week.
Look, it's clear the system is stacked against me.
Yeah, there we go. Definitely.
I'm feeling a little bit kind of defeated. I thought I had two absolutely guaranteed.
Come on, man of the people. You can do it.
You and Donald Trump, men of the people.
I don't like this.
No,
okay.
It's getting worse.
All right. Well, let's just say it's I was about to say it's 1-1, but I don't even think I can steal it.
It's not.
I know. Fine, it's 2-0. All right, we'll come back with the sleeper story in a sec. All right, Sean, we are looking for the sleeper story of the week, which is a story. I'm already laughing because I'm looking ahead going, can I win this?
I would just like to point out that during the break there, Michael said one thing to Adam, our judge. It was a phrase. This is total BS. And that's all he said.
He's such a fervent competitor, isn't he?
I'm enjoying this so much. Not so much because I've won. It's just watching Michael lose is so much fun.
Come on, Michael.
The injustice of it all is just...
There it goes.
Anyway, look, sleeper story of the week. So this is obviously one that's maybe not getting the attention that it deserves, and maybe a story that's going to become a bigger story further down the track. Sean, what have you got?
Chinese diplomacy.
Oh, okay. All right. How?
Yeah, what are you talking about? So this week we found out that there's a strong chance Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will visit Beijing later this year to mark the 50th anniversary of the first ever Prime Minister to visit that country. Of course, that was Gough Whitlam. In that trip, the leaders of both countries agreed to promulgate a relationship based on equality, mutual respect and mutual benefit. That's why we always hear those words when both sides are talking about it at the moment. They're actually reflecting back on 50 years ago. Anyway, Albo going to Beijing would be a substantial warming of relations between Australia and our most important trade partner. Also this week, China hosted French President Emmanuel Macron. Among the European Union countries, particularly since Angela Merkel stepped down in Germany, Macron has become the natural leader, and France, as demonstrated by its more open approach to Russia, is more inclined to diplomacy when it comes to China, well, certainly more inclined than the US is. So Xi Jinping is going out of his way to accommodate Macron and also European President Ursula von der Leyen. She has also visited Russia recently. Of course, we had Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews in China last week, not to visit the president, but for other somewhat mysterious purposes. There's also been lower level visits to China during March from Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand and Brazil. Beijing is, behind the scenes, working very hard to ingratiate itself into the world order with or without the US's blessing. And Australia is part of that. This is a massive sleeper story. No one's talking about China's role in terms of diplomacy. It's only being spoken of in terms of aggression. But if you look behind the scenes, China is making a real effort to reach out to countries. There you go, Michael.
That's a good story.
Faint praise.
No, it's good. It's good. Well done. My sleeper story. I've got confidence back. I took a moment then while you were talking, Sean, just to tune out and just kind of center myself. And I'm back. I'm back, baby. Because Adam, my sleeper story, this one is for you. It is a sleeper story that is not obviously getting much attention, which I actually think is quite simply outrageous. Because when a Nobel Prize winning Labour economist speaks, people should listen. So, therefore, being the selfless man of the people that I am willing to give my sleeper story this week to make sure that Professor Peter Pissarides...
Who?
Professor Peter Pissarides, goodness me, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from the London School of Economics is heard by all. Is that not the definition of selflessness? That is a rhetorical question. You don't need to answer it. This professor declared this week that AI and ChatGPT may well open the door to your own holy grail, the 4-day work week. He said that we could use the technology to increase productivity, and I quote, "We could increase our well-being generally from work, and we could take off more leisure. We could move to a 4-day week easily." The critical part of this, and the reason why this is so significant this week, is that he said the labour market could actually adapt quickly, very quickly, to AI chatbots and the like, basically rejecting all the fears about mass job losses. And a report from Goldman Sachs says that 300 million jobs could potentially be exposed. as part of the AI revolution because of this new technology. Now, don't forget that he has won a Nobel Prize. I think I've mentioned that. It was in economics for his work on labour market frictions. He's investigated the impact of the automation of jobs. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he probably knows what he's talking about. And it is particularly interesting because it comes hot on the heels of an open letter signed by people like Elon Musk and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, calling for a 6-month pause on AI development because of, quote, the profound risks to society and humanity. Sounds pretty serious. But if it means that we get a 4-day work week out of it, I think it's a trade-off that we're probably willing to make. What do you reckon, Adam?
Well, I'm really vexed on this one. I think I have to give this to you, Michael, and it's probably not by as clear a margin as you might hope or think, but because Sean's story is profound as a sleeper story. Chinese diplomacy, we've seen them be very aggressive, even in the last 5 years, and how that's turned now to be more congenial and trade-oriented in their diplomacy. I think that is massive, and it is an ongoing and huge sleeper story. But this one could be even broader. And, whether or not it's a 4-day working week that people are after or not, I think what it does or what it will do is enable greater choice in how we work, how often we work, what we choose to do with our lives. So I have to give this one to you, Michael, for Sleeper Story of the Week.
Can you sound happy to do it though, Adam? Because it sounded like you actually loathed awarding that point to me just then, that I'm wondering whether there could be some personal bias.
Oh,
where he enjoys hearing me get worked up about losing.
Okay, I have to bring this up, Michael, because when we worked together, I think I brought this up with you. Do you remember the story of Calimero?
Yes, I do remember this.
So, Sean, do you know Calimero?
No, I don't.
It's really obscure, but when I was a kid growing up, I came across this European cartoon, and it's called Calimero. It's about this little chicken with half his eggs still on his head, and he never really quite grows up and takes responsibility. And he walks around, his catch cry is, "It's an injustice." And that is those words I've heard come out of Michael's mouth in this very episode.
I've never said injustice.
You did. You said, "It's such an injustice," after the last story.
There is no evidence of this.
There is. It's a recording.
Let's move on.
Okay. Well, look, let's accept it's good. It's 2-1. It feels like the competition is alive once more. Favorite story of the week? Sean, you go first.
Well, my favourite is actually 3 stories connected by the same storyline. They're all about battlers made good. I wonder whether any of these guys appear on a current affair in their success stories. Maybe they will. Anyway, firstly, 50 years ago, a bloke aptly named Reg Rowe started a mail order business with his wife, Hazel. This week, Mr. Rowe stepped down from the business, having founded it, ran it, and then sat on the board for 5 decades. Now, the business is Super Retail Group. Most of us know that through the brands Supercheap Auto, Rebel Sports, Macpac, etc. Reg still owns 30% of it. That's about $1 billion worth. Well done, Reg. So he's out this week. Also this week, there was the story about the Lebanese migrant Fred Shahin, who back in 1984 couldn't find a job, needed a house, but did have some money. He answered an ad in the Advertiser in Adelaide, the Tiser, and bought a BP petrol station, mostly because it also included a house. That initial petrol station involved into a 205-strong network of on-the-run retailers, and this week it sold for almost $1.2 billion to Viva Energy. Mr. Shahin died in the late 1990s, but his 3 children now own the business. What a cracking yarn. And finally, Adam, this week, Melbourne-based skincare group Aesop was sold for $3.7 billion. That's the largest luxury product sale ever in Australia. Isn't quite as romantic a story given that the people it was started by a hairdresser in Armidale in Melbourne back in 1987, and they started selling out of the business, or he started selling out of the business in 2012 and eventually got out in 2016 or thereabouts. Anyway, that business was sold for $3.7 billion this week. Just 3 great stories of people in their garage making a hell of a lot of money. My favourite story for the week. Michael.
Now, look, it's impossible, really, to compete with someone who's just hoovered up every single good news story from the week and rolled them into one behemoth of a feel-good entry that I would just have to tell a story about puppies and kittens and kind of rainbows in order to beat it. So my favorite story was actually a couple of the nice stats that came out of the end of the quarter.
Oh, this works well for you. Go on.
They came out of the end of the quarter. And because this is, after all, a business news podcast. And I'm going to say, you know what? As a true man of the people, not someone who just piggybacks off other people's kind of good stories, as you just did, Sean. As a true man of the people, it's wonderful. I've got to say, it's wonderful to see Telstra doing well again, hitting its highest point since 2017. Now that the NBN rollout's behind it, the future's looking a little bit clearer. Of course, it's the most widely held stock in the country. So there are plenty of mum and dad investors out there right this very minute nodding their heads in agreement with me going, he's got a point, this bloke. This is our favourite story of the week. Not any of those kind of 3 billionaires who have just made a mint from selling stuff. This is just a good story of people just making some good financial decisions. And so from our national telco to our national airline, another one in a similar boat as Qantas, heading back towards pre-pandemic levels. Kind of great news once again for the everyday investor. We've got some of those standout performers from the quarter as well. WiseTech Global up 32%, making back a bit of ground after a pretty tough time for tech stocks. Newcrest Mining, 29%, the jump in the price of gold. Woolies, Coles, Transurban, Goodman Group, all had a good quarter. This is the kind of thing that really matters, right? To the little people like me. The stocks we hold through our super, the things that might one day make our retirement a little more comfortable. I love the stories of the battlers having big windfalls, but on this one, I'm on the side of the everyman who's just kind of doing their best to set themselves up. And I think we kind of saw that this week with just some good household names having a good quarter. There you go, Adam.
Michael, at some point, sincerity seemed to leave the narrative.
Which part was that?
The beginning.
Oh, that seems unnecessarily harsh. I refer back to my earlier comments about bias, but please go on.
You always take it so well. What I did love was your summation of yourself as a, quote, true man of the people. End of quote.
Yeah.
That was just a precious moment for me personally. Sean wins this one. I think 3 fantastic founder stories, and no doubt for any founders out there, and including us, this is inspirational stuff. The end destination of where they're reaching is just fantastic. And I think that is a wonderful set of favourite stories. Michael, you criticised Sean for bringing in 3 stories together, then listed about 20 different companies under yours. So just don't know that your grab bag really had it on that front, either the criticism or the substance of the story this week.
Now, Adam, I've got to let you into a secret on this one. About an hour before the show, Michael gave me a ring. He goes, I haven't really got a favourite story. What do you reckon was a good story this week?
You sold him this pup.
I said, I reckon it's pretty good that Telstra did really well and Qantas, lots of people, lots of shareholders. He goes, oh, yeah, that'll be my favourite story. So the fact that you didn't find it quite sincere enough doesn't surprise me.
Well, can I let you both in on a little secret?
Yes.
I was about to nominate myself and a current affair for my favourite story of the week.
Sorry, hold on. Were you on a current affair this week, Michael?
I was. Let me tell you about it in some detail. No, I was going to do it, and then all of a sudden it got a run earlier in the episode, and I thought, you know what? I don't need to waste my my favourite story entry anymore. So you dodged that bullet of having to listen to that, and I actually dodged the bullet of hearing Adam say that it wasn't as good a story as Sean's entry. So 3-1. Tell us the points. Tell us the breakdown.
Okay. Well, Michael, it's still a very high quality battle. 86 points out of 100.
Oh, nice one.
And Sean, I think this is your personal best, 94.
Oh, that might be my PB, I think.
New benchmark.
I'm liking you more and more, Adam. At least till next week.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sean.
And thank you, Sean, and congratulations.
Thank you, Michael. And Adam, thank you for being a magnificent judge this week.
Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, don't forget you can stay up to date on all the business news with Alexa and your Amazon Echo smart speaker. Simply say, Alexa, play the Fear and Greed podcast to catch the latest episode like this one. Grab yours now at amazon.com.au. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.